Hey, yo, it's Joe. He's the host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.
What is up? It is Mock Draft Monday, and I am joined by a really good dude, Lupugus. I know him as Nik Edlund, but Lupugus from the Onebar and Lupugus podcast on YouTube show. They are your one-stop shop for everything Minnesota Vikings and their and psychics and everything else as we were talking about before we went live. So I have been a guest on their show last couple of years for the segment Sculling with the Enemy, which was a ton of fun. I'm really glad to have an opportunity to get Nik on the show here with us. You guys are going to love him. Good stuff. So, Nik, now that I just, kind of propped you up, tell everyone about you, whatever you want to say hi, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love that intro. That was beautiful. That was really that was something else. Onebar and Lupugus Show, Minnesota Vikings, been doing it now for I think 3 years. We just hit over 8,800 subscribers. We just love it. Drink beer, talk about the Vikings, and it's absolutely fantastic. So appreciate you coming on our show. Two-timer, one of the few two-timers we've had. So you're good at the first time, but we brought you back the second time. So I'm excited to finally reciprocate and be on your side of things here.
Well, it means a lot to me that you had me back, so that was good. Yeah. Although I last time I nearly took over your show. I mean,
I had a delay. I had to go back and watch it, figure out what happened. It delayed, and you started talking. How are you talking? But that was weird.
Yeah, it was good fun though. So listen, we have a lot of fun here in Mock Draft Mondays. So I'm glad to have you here with us. So real quick, we're gonna do what we do. We're gonna say hey to some of the folks in the chat real quick. We've got Grandizer, who someone who pops into everyone's live streams and is just really supportive. Holds down the chat. Appreciate you, Grandizer. Thank you for being here. And he's also doing what he does. He's got your links in there in the chat. Grandizer's a good dude. We got Robert Moore. Thanks for being here. Good evening, gents. Intro is still fire. Appreciate that.
It is.
We got Red Sea with us, still at work and feel like crap, but it's Mock Draft Monday. That is right. We got Drew McWhorter. Happy Mock Draft Monday, everyone. Hits harder than the NBA. Oh, well. Oh, yes. All right. So let's real quick talk about just some of the stuff that's going on in Cardinals news. Obviously, it's all about the coaching search right now. The Super Bowl was just in our backyard. That kind of put things on delay. So, we have sort of these three finalists we've been talking about. We've got, Lou Anarumo, Mike Kafka, and then Jonathan Gannon has emerged as a finalist. And a recent tweet from Josh Weinfuss, who covers the Cardinals for ESPN.com, mentioned, adding to a tweet from Adam Schefter, that a source told him that Cardinals have focused their head coaching search on Gannon and Bengals DC Lou Anarumo. The source also said Arizona could make a decision tonight, which we may hear about it tonight if that's the case, but we might not hear about it till tomorrow. So a lot of people think it's down to these two. In a follow-up tweet, Weinfuss did add that this does not mean Kafka is out. He just says they're focusing on these two, whatever that means. Maybe they're just maybe they've done all their due diligence on Kafka and they're looking at these two. So it's hard to know who's going to be the head coach. We're going to find out. There's a lot of people who really want Gannon to be coached, Anarumo. Kafka seems to be the least favorite amongst Cardinals fans, although he's actually, for me, my top pick. But Nik, as an outsider, looking at the Cardinals, when you look at these three candidates, do you have any thoughts on, maybe who you think would be the best fit, or any thoughts you want to add up, about these coaches?
Well, we were talking before this. This reminds me of our search a year ago where we had to hire GM. We had to look at, we didn't hire a coach till after the Super Bowl either. So reminds me a lot of that. And I like your three candidates here. This is who it's coming down to. I think you guys did well waiting this thing out. The Bengals defensive coordinator, Anarumo, I mean, just how he's got that team playing and the adjustments he made in that game against the Chiefs there. I mean, it was really, really impressive. And then Kafka that we talked about with what he's done with Daniel Jones, barely any weapons. He made Daniel Jones a lot of money here in about a month.
Right.
So very, very impressive as well. I do think he spent some time on the Vikings practice squad as well. So I got to give him a purple endorsement.
Right.
And Gannon, he interviewed for the Vikings job last year. So this is another up and comer. You got 3 ascending guys here. So I don't think you can go wrong. It's not like any crusty retread. So I like your options. They're all fresh and they're all exciting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I feel that way too. I'll be happy with any of these 3. I mean, I rank them for me, Kafka, Anarumo, and then Gannon, but I'm not going to be disappointed with any of them. So, and listen, to be having moved on from Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, I think is a breath of fresh air for most Cardinals fans. Maybe more so Keim than Kingsbury, but I'm excited to give this new coach a chance, whoever it is, right? So
hey, I couldn't even watch that. Your guys' Hard Knocks. Kingsbury was so boring to watch and dull. I could watch one episode and I gave up on it. I don't know.
I mean, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I'm gonna I'm gonna inject it into my veins no matter what.
Sure,
there were some episodes that were a little slow. Here's what I will say: there were some things that I think were really good about it. I think that everyone got to see just how awesome Budda Baker was one thing that I really liked about it. I think I don't think everyone realized just what a dude he is. As the season went on, some of the stuff with J.J. Watt was a really nice epilogue for his career. It just really hit some really good notes to see that process, of him announcing his retirement and seeing some of the behind the scenes of how he was celebrated on his way out. If nothing else, I think that was really a nice thing to see. But if you didn't make it past the first episode, obviously, you didn't get a chance to see that stuff. Mm-hmm. But listen, I'm a Cardinals fan, and I'll admit there was a lot of kind of, stuff that was just not real engaging or exciting. It was just like, okay, as a fan of the Cardinals, it's interesting to see what's going on, but there wasn't a lot behind the scenes that was exciting in that. So I would generally agree with that.
Season kind of went downhill too after that, after it started. But I mean, it's hard to fault the lines with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's so damn lovable and funny, and I mean, it was a tough act to follow.
No, 100%. Like Dan Campbell made himself a star of that. So biting off kneecaps and all that grit. So for sure. Real quick, I want to say hey to some of the other folks that popped in. Let me start, though. We've got a super chat from Jason. Thank you so much. What's up, Joe? Off topic. That field was bad.
Yeah. What the hell was that? What was up with that? Is that how it always is?
So, Cardinals had an inordinate number of injuries this year. Like, I think they were the second or third most injured team, and that was a big part of our struggles. And as we looked at why that was, certainly the aging roster, all those veterans like A.J. Green that were older, even though he wasn't one of the injured players, that was one of the things to look at. But some people talked about maybe there were some issues with the field. And the Chiefs complained about the field after the week 1 game, where they came in. So there have been some questions about the field. And it's interesting, they have a very unique field. It was the first of its kind as far as I understand. I think the Las Vegas Raiders have that now, where the field kind of rolls outside and gets sun, and then they roll it in to the Dome Stadium. There was someone on Twitter who did tweet that they had actually specifically prepared the sod for this game, and that it was installed weeks ago for this game. So it's not like it was exactly the same field, but something, who knows? But they're going to have to look at it, because it was a problem for sure, right? And people slipping.
Painted areas were even worse. I mean, were especially bad. It was weird to see that in the Super Bowl. Yeah, for sure. So, and listen, for Arizona fans, it's just one more kind of like bad story after bad story coming out, for us since the off season. It's just like, great, just one more thing, right? So, yeah, that was rough. Let's go say hey to some of the other folks who dropped in. We've got Ben Cork. Good day, Joe. Thank you for being here. I think Ben, are you from Canada, if I remember correctly? If I'm wrong, I apologize. Sounds like he's from Australia with that. Yeah, right, he does sound like that, right? If I'm wrong, please forgive me and correct me. Brian Wallace, love your show. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you, whether you're referring to me or Mr. Lupugus here. Either way, we both thank you. We've got Rodriguez Lawn Care. Yeah, what can you tell us about the field, right? Are we going to talk the rest of the field? I mean, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Yeah, that's the guy you should have on right now. Right? You tell us. The owner, proprietor, operator of Rodriguez Lawn Care. Yeah, that was rough, right? Let's see, got a couple other folks. We got Moore's Legacy dropped in. We won a Super Bowl, sort of.
Yeah, maybe. Gary Coker, thanks for being here. I'm going with Gannon. He won't keep Vance Joseph. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way, right? So for sure. We got Dakota Bedard. I got Discord also. What is your name for Discord? I'm checking the problem. There's a link for the Discord in the description of the video, Dakota. So jump in there. We got like 180 people in there. It's a nice little community we've got. Here's a question for you. Do Minnesota fans really want Patrick Peterson back?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Some people don't think. Because we have Brian Flores. So what does Brian Flores do? He rushes everybody, puts his corners on islands. There's some who are concerned that he's too old. He can't, play press man like that anymore. But look at what other options are. We got Andrew Booth Jr., who barely played last year as a rookie. Caleb Evans, the fourth rounder, who barely played. He had some concussion issues. And Cam Dantzler, who's missed almost as many games as he played. So it's a tough situation. Either we're going to go real young at corner, or we're going to go out and find somebody, or bring back old man Patrick Peterson. So it's torn. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing him back. I think he wants to come back. He's actually played pretty well overall since he's been here in Minnesota. So I'd be okay with one more stint with old PP.
He had a much better season this year than he did his first year with you.
Yeah.
I think. He improved a lot, or his performance improved a lot. So, and cornerbacks, they can lose a step, but for being a position that's about speed, has a lot to do with speed, they surprisingly play pretty late into the 30s effectively, as a position.
We had Ed Donatel, defensive coordinator. He's playing everybody about 10 yards off a receiver. I just don't understand it. So it's really hard to judge anybody when you're playing that kind of coverage.
Right. We've got Payo Time, a Rams content creator who is a really good dude. Mock Draft Mondays, let's go. Appreciate you being here, Payo. Really good human. If you're ever looking for a Rams person, get him on there. Good guy. You'll love him. If you're not already familiar with him.
No, I didn't think we could find a Rams guy last time.
Yeah. So he is a good dude. Payo, follow Nik on Twitter. And for everyone else, Nik's links for his YouTube channel and Twitter are in the description. So make sure you follow him. Payo, connect up with him. Two good guys. I am right. Just outside Ottawa. That memory once in a while works for me.
Heck yeah.
Right. We got CB hanging out with us. So what does these players want? Non-turf or grass? OBJ last season. Now the players from last night's game. All the humanity. Turf, a lot of injuries with turf, but if the grass isn't taken care of, they want a well taken care of natural field, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Here we go. The grass is overwatered and grass was cut too short. There you go. Right. There's the answer.
I think you have potential sponsorship on your hands here with Rodriguez Lawn Care.
Right. For sure. Lance, thanks for being here. Is him. Let's go. MCM or MDM. Thank you for being here though. Doc's Cards. You think Kime left the hose on as a final FU to the Cardinals in the NFL? I wonder, Yeah, there's rumors about where Kime is, so Kime might not have been able to do that, but maybe Cliff. He is back from from his trip abroad. So yeah, I don't know. Well, why don't we get into? We're going to get into the mock draft stuff. I've got as I do every week. I'm going to do a player profile. What we're doing here with Mock Draft Mondays, we're all learning about this draft class. I'm still learning about these players. And one of the things I like to do is every week I do a profile of someone who's usually a day 2 or day 3 prospect. Between now and the draft, we're going to hear so much about those first rounders, but it's those guys deeper in the draft that I want to learn about. So that come 5th round or 6th round, when one of our teams takes this guy, we know who he is, right? That makes it that much more enjoyable. And one of the positions that the Cardinals really need to address, I think that most fans agree, is the interior defensive line. With J.J. Watt retiring, Rashard Lawrence having a hard time staying healthy, Zach Allen is nice, but he also has some injury problems. We need some help on the interior defensive line. And there's a lot of players on day 2 and 3 that I like for defensive linemen. And I'm going to talk about a player we haven't really talked about here. I haven't seen him show up on many mock drafts, if any, but he's a player that's kind of interesting to me. And that player is Kobe Turner out of Wake Forest. He's 23 years old. He's a redshirt senior, so he's a little bit older as a prospect, 6'3", 290. He projects as like a late day 2, early day 3 prospect. I've seen projections anywhere from round 3 to 5. But one of the things that stood out to me about him immediately was his PFF grades were like outstanding, like that in the blue, right, for his last 3 years across the board. And if you look at his 2022 season, he played well against some good teams. Like one of his best games was against Clemson. Now with Wake Forest, you think, oh, is he just padding his stats against teams like Vanderbilt or whoever, right, or Duke? But he played really well against Clemson. Had a solid game against Florida State. So the thing about Kobe Turner is he transferred from the University of Richmond to Wake Forest. So prior to 2022, he was with Richmond, much a smaller school than Wake Forest, played well there. But the fact that he stepped in at Wake Forest, a little bit higher level of competition, and put up a PFF grade of 92.2 is really impressive. He's a guy with a high motor. He's got good core strength and leverage, disruptive off the line as a penetrator with a good initial burst. They say in the scouting reports he can get skinny and get through the gaps in the blocking. He doesn't have the kind of bend and things you need to play on the outside. He's a little small for the inside. His arm's a little short. So he's going to have to add some weight. He's got some struggles, but he's a guy who could be a disruptor. And he's a guy I would love to get if we can get him on day 3 in like round 4 or 5, if he makes it that far. I feel like we need to get a defensive lineman in round 2 or 3 as well. But if we get him as well to add to that as a guy, maybe puts on a little bit of weight, depending on what our new coach runs on defense. Maybe he's a defensive tackle, or maybe it's a 3 technique in that 3-4. But I think he's an interesting player for the Cardinals. So I don't know if you are versed on Kobe Turner. I will forgive you if you aren't. But anything you want to add before we go to your mock draft and mine?
No, I don't. I'm learning about him too, so I appreciate that. We actually had our live last Wednesday. Had guys throw names out for us to look at, because we got people who watch from all over, so obviously they know their schools better than we do. So I was writing those down and doing some research. So another one, because we're also need some interior D-line help. So definitely some of the Vikings could be looking at too. I did want to ask you though.
Yeah.
PFF to you. Here's the thing with that. I watched the games, and then I'm like, this guy was horrible. Then I look at their PFF grades way higher than I think it is. So I'm like, what are they grading? And Onebar, who I do the show with, I mean, it's the Bible for him. Like, I mean, PFF could tell him he's a woman, he'd believe them. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I'm like, I don't really know what you guys are grading. So I wish I knew their actual scale.
So little inside knowledge. I actually worked part-time at a very, very low contract level for them. They hire people at like an entry-level position to work remotely to just do like some of the beginning stages. And like the stuff I was training you to do was literally like finding out which players are on the field and making a note of it in their system, and then finding where they're lining up. So I did no grading, but I did work for one season just doing some college stuff. And I saw a little bit of their processes, not the whole thing. And I've seen enough about how they do it. So what I can tell you is this, like, they have people watch the film, they look at a player, and they look at what was his responsibility. Was he rushing the passer? Was he dropping the coverage? And then they look at, what did he do on that play? Did he do just his job, no more, no less? Did he make a bad play? Did he make an exceptional play? And they rate them. I think it's like a 5-point scale on each play, if I'm not mistaken. It could be like a minus, whatever, plus. So they do that, okay? And then they kind of have people double check it. So every play gets checked twice. And then they have this sort of kind of formula that they use to create a grade based on looking at every single play. Now, a couple things to keep in mind with that. Like, they look at not the result of the play, but kind of the process. For example, if your quarterback throws something right on the hands of the receiver, right? Perfect throw, but the receiver, whatever, jumps up, and it becomes an interception because the receiver messed it up, PFF will still grade that as a plus throw, right? So sometimes there's a kind of an incongruence with the result. We see, that quarterback had an interception, but he actually had a great throw. The receiver screwed it up, right? So sometimes that's a little bit of that. And then they look at every single play. So like, you'll look at a quarterback and say, well, he had 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. Why was he graded at a 62.3? Well, those plays for those touchdowns were good, and there were a couple big plays that might have been made more by receivers than by him, but he might have also had a bunch of plays where he nearly threw interceptions, and they grade everything, right? So it's not a stat, it's an every play grading, and it doesn't, so sometimes there's just some differences in how that works out. And then when they grade that all for each position, they create sort of this, they have this formula that says, okay, for being a cornerback, your coverage grade is much more important than your pass rushing grade, and things like that. And they prioritize those things. As a quarterback, your passing grade is much more important than your running grade, but your running grade still matters. So that's the secret sauce that we don't all know, how they weight those things, and they come up with their grades. That's a really long drawn out. It's not perfect, but I think it's a useful tool. It's not a true stat. It's a grade based. There's some subjectivity, but they do have a process that double checks it. So it's not perfect. You have to use it. I like to say you triangulate things, right? You look at the stats, you look at the PFF grade, and then you look at what your eyes tell you, and it all gives you the full picture. So I'm sure that's a lot more drawn out than you were expecting.
I mean, it's nice to know you have a little bit of inside information on that. But even with any draft profile, and you guys can see this, I go on one site, and their strengths will be listed, and the weaknesses will be the same thing they said the strengths were. I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
I saw that with Turner. One. I didn't mention this because one site said his hand usage was really good and his moves are really good, and the other one said he's very chaotic with his hand usage and needs to develop his moves. So you look at like the for example, when I talk about Kobe Turner, the things I mentioned were the things that I saw consistently on multiple sites. They all kind of said these particular things about him. So, yeah, you have to triangulate it. Yep. I think, my day job, I work as a sociologist, so I work with data all the time. And I understand that from that, the data isn't perfect, and you take it with kind of some fuzziness to it. And you kind of grab the data loosely and see what you can get out of it, but understand that it's not perfect. So, anyway, good question, though.
All right,
my 30-minute monologue on PFF, right?
That was good. You needed to get that out, I think.
Yeah, that was that. Jason Crow's asking, Joe, do you like Eric Bieniemy? I think there's a reason he hasn't been hired as a head coach, and I don't want to get too political on this. I think there's some legitimate critiques of issues of race in the league, and I don't want to be dismissive of that. I mean, I'm a sociologist. That's what I study. I don't think this is about that. I think he's interviewed poorly. I think there's some stuff behind the scenes on his interaction with the players. One of the things I saw is that when he interviewed for head coach, when people asked him about his plan for the team, he said he had a plan, but he didn't have a lot of details on it. And he's done a good job there. I know Andy Reid is propping him up. I wouldn't mind him as an offensive coordinator, but I don't want him as head coach. Now, I'd like to see him go somewhere else as an offensive coordinator, get a couple years, and maybe demonstrate he can be head coach. And I'd love to see him get there. For me, there's enough question marks. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Bieniemy?
No, I heard everything that you said, and he interviewed poorly. I think there's also questions about what his actual role is. How much does he have in the game plan? How much is he? Even he doesn't call plays. It's Andy Reid's job. Hey, we had an Andy Reid, protege as a head coach. Brad Childress didn't pan out very well. So I don't know. It's hard to say in that Andy Reid's tree how much his role actually is. But he gave him props last night. So. Yeah.
Of course, if you're a good leader, you're going to do that for your soldiers, right? So and I'm, so I'm not trying to be completely dismissive of that, but Andy Reid was doing right by him. I really hope for Eric Bieniemy that he goes somewhere else as an offensive coordinator and gets to show that he can be that, and then gets to be a head coach. But right now, I haven't seen enough. Let me say to a couple folks, and then we'll get into the mock drafts. But thank you, Jason, for the super chats and for the comments. I appreciate that. We got a few more folks that have jumped in. Mikey Desert Cardinal, what's up, bros? Appreciate you. Mikey wrote the lyrics to my theme song, so this is the guy.
Really?
Mike, your T-shirt is on the way. So hopefully you get that soon. Let me know when you get that, but that is coming. Let's see, a couple folks that have dropped in as well. Saltiest Gaming, thank you for being here. What's up, everyone? We appreciate you hanging out with us for show. And no buts about it. Hopping in here during the PFF lecture was worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Josh Butts has a podcast, No Buts About It, that is with Chris. I had a Zoom call with them a while back just to kind of have a good conversation and with them. And they're fans of, he's a Bengals fan. As a Bengals fan, Lou is awesome and would love to keep him, but also root for him as head coach, right? So appreciate that insight. Okay. Let's get into, though, our mock draft. So what I did is I had asked Nik here to do a Cardinals mock draft. And then he also did a Vikings mock draft. I did a Vikings mock draft and a Cardinals. So tell us your thought go through your picks and just kind of give us an idea of your thought process and rationale with this mock draft.
Okay, well, here's the thing. So I basically just looked at your guys' team needs and kind of went from there. This one I did one before this, but I was given a king's ransom for the third pick. Didn't get a single trade this time, but Jalen Carter was there. I saw that was a big need for you guys, and why not? This guy is just a beast, a disruptor, game changer up front. He'll help any defense. Do you want me to walk through all these and then you hop in?
Sure, give us just your quick rationale for each of them. Tell me what you're thinking.
So I see you guys need an edge rusher. Lucas Van Ness was there. You love his length. His closing speed is pretty impressive. Devin A-Chain, the speedy running back from Texas A&M. He gives you a 1-2 combination. He can catch the football, and anytime he touches it, he's a home run threat. I don't care if you guys need a linebacker or not. I love Ivan Pace Jr., a little undersized, but I love the way he plays, a lot of energy. Flies to the football. I want Minnesota to pair with Brian Asamoah to be our next, linebackers in the middle. I think they'd be electric together. I love Ivan Pace Jr. So nice. I disregarded need on that one. I just said, I love this guy. I'm giving him to the Cardinals. Andrew Voorhees, physical interior guard there. He can move guys off the line of scrimmage, plays nasty, plays mean, and his name is Voorhees. How sweet is that? You got the Jason connection there, Friday the 13th. Keitrell Clark, he was a guy who did very, very well at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Weird saying bowl, and I've been saying game for so many years, but it is the East-West Shrine Bowl. And he's a smaller dude, but he's actually very physical. I was watching some highlights on him before this, and I saw one where he picks up a guy and pretty much just body slams him. Then another corner, Corey Trice. This guy's 6'3". Why would you not want a 6'3" corner who can pair up with any receiver he lines up against? And then I know you need a center. It's not John Michael Schmidt, so I'm sorry about that. But Jacob Gall was there. He's a physical run blocker. His technique can get pretty sloppy at times in pass protection, but he was a center. That needed to fill there, so I went ahead and grabbed him.
So I like this. It's clear you have a good sense of the Cardinals' needs, or maybe PFN does, and you did a good job of reading what they said. But these are the kinds of positions that we're seeing in our mock drafts over and over again. I mentioned earlier, defensive interior line, is a big need. Jalen Carter is a popular pick at number 3 for our mock drafts. I like it. I do wonder, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, if we might see the Cardinals move in a different direction from him particularly. But the position, he's a great player, no doubt. But I love that. Edge rusher, we've got a couple young edge rushers we like a lot, but we don't have that bona fide, number 1 edge rusher. So, a lot of Cardinals fans are mocking getting an edge rusher early so we can get someone. So I like that. We definitely see, running back as a need. James Conner, I think, is a really good power back. He's a good short yardage back. I like him as part of the rotation, but, they need to kind of add some bodies to that room, and a speed back like Shane from A&M would be an outstanding addition. So I love that. Linebacker, we drafted linebackers in the first round last 2 years. That's kind of the running joke, is that Steve Keim is just going to draft linebackers all the time. But listen, if our new defensive coach, our new coach runs a 4-3, then we're going to need another linebacker, right? And even if they don't, I don't mind having, usually they have a third linebacker that rotates in and plays, maybe half the snaps and sub packages and things like that. And Isaiah Simmons, they move him around. They play him at slot a lot and, safety. So we'll see what the new coaches do. But, I don't hate adding a linebacker. I often add a linebacker on day 3. So, the value is there. I don't hate that. Voorhees getting a good guard in there. He's a very popular pick, so I love that. Getting some cornerbacks is good. I think we go cornerback earlier in a lot of our mock drafts because we want to get someone who's more of a starter. But definitely adding cornerbacks good. And then we usually go center earlier. But I will say our new GM, Monty Austinfort, comes from the Patriots organization. and has a track record of finding good offensive linemen late in the draft. So it would not shock me, as much as we loved, John Michael Hughes or Center Schmitz. It would not surprise me if our GM, despite our wishes and supplications, opts to go later and find those diamonds in the rough that he's been able to do. So getting a center somewhere, is great, right? So I think it's a good mock. Good job.
Thanks.
I like it.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Got a couple of comments in here. No more linebackers.
It's funny you said that about linebackers, but we feel the same way about corners. So
yeah, right. Oh well, then we're going to have a moment. We're going to have a conversation about that in a moment. We need to drop offensive line. That's definitely. You don't want. I don't want to start Neiman. No, Austin, I do not. Right. Yeah. So there we go. So Nick Vigil, the goat. Right.
Hey, we had Nick Vigil.
Yes, we had him for the preseason, and then yeah. So I like it. I think you did a good job. So yeah. All right. So now it's my turn to do a Vikings mock, and I'm gonna go through my thought process. So you talked about tired of cornerbacks. Well, sorry, not sorry. I got you a cornerback right off the bat, but I traded back. Okay, you don't have a lot of picks. And, listen, you're a team that doesn't have a lot of needs. What do you get the team that has everything, right? Well, I mean, there's a few things you need. So I still added a couple picks. So I had you trade back into the beginning of the second round. And I had you get a cornerback because, with you've talked about your struggles with cornerbacks, and with Patrick Peterson, a free agent, Dancer's injury issues. So I had you get what a lot of people think is the best pressed man corner in the league. And, maybe that's going to be a good fit, with Brian Flores. So I thought going cornerback early to try to get you hopefully a true number one. And then in the third round, with the 65th pick, I had you get Jalen Hyatt, receiver out of Tennessee. He's 6'1", 180, elite speed. With Adam Thielen, 32 years old, I thought it'd be good to draft sort of an heir apparent for him, someone they can develop to play across from, I think you guys have arguably the best receiver, so in Jefferson. So, to have someone across from to develop, I thought would be a good thing to do. You have good edge rushers, but I like getting developmental edge rushers. I thought getting another developmental edge going that room was nice with Nick Herbig. He was really productive, 11 sacks in 2022. Maybe that was a luxury pick, but that's where I went there. Then I had you get a center, not John Michael Schmitz, Olusegun Oluwatimi. I'm probably butchering that, out of Michigan. One of the better prospects, though. Did I? Nice. I mean, you don't know, but yeah, for all we know, right? So, I think, Bradbury's a free agent. I know he had struggled, had a breakout season of sorts this year, or at least much improved. Mm-hmm. Says he wants to be back. We don't know if they're going to bring him back, but even if they bring him back, having a back, like your current backups at center are all undrafted free agents. So having a contingency plan, whether in case he regresses or gets injured, or if, you sign him to a short-term deal and you want to have a guy you develop to be his replacement. I thought getting a center there in the fourth round with some talent would maybe make sense. Alexander Madison is a free agent, is arguably one of the best backup running backs / rotational backs, who's not the number one back in the league. Aside, I think aside from the guy in Dallas, he might be the best one. So I thought, he might want to go somewhere where he'd be the lead back, and maybe the Vikings might opt not to spend on him since you're already be paying Dalvin Cook a lot of money. So I thought getting another running back in the room with some of the young guys you have, like Ty Chandler, and Kenny Nwangwu. So I thought, getting another guy in there in Chase Brown might be nice to kind of help offset the loss of Madison if he moves on. Safety, Harrison Smith's 34, Lewis Sines returning from a really bad leg injury. Josh Metellus played better than, his seventh round draft status. But I thought it'd be good to get someone who can be some depth and maybe even a potential starter at some point, when Harrison Smith retires or sign isn't, quite right. And then finally, I got you a quarterback, Clayton Tune out of Houston. 6'3", 220. In 2022, he had over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 110 passer rating. Nick Mullins been a decent backup, but, it would be nice to have maybe some of that room you develop into a long-term backup, or even who knows what's going on with Kirk Cousins long-term. So, thought I'd add a quarterback to them. So there's my Vikings draft.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what I messed up.
Well, first, I'm not gonna lie. Cornerback could be our first pick. It very well might be our first pick, and I love legacy players. So Joey Porter Jr. will get me excited, especially trading down to 33 and getting him is insane. Here's my thing with taking a corner early. We do it all the time, and I just feel like we need to, improve our D line. I mean, the only guy coming back that we know that's productive is Harrison Phillips. Delvin Tomlinson's a free agent. I don't know if we can afford him. I don't know what he's going to command on the open market, but he was damn good last year. And after that, we got James Lynch, and then just a bunch of Estezi Atunweo, the second-year player from Minnesota, who didn't do much when he did see the field last year, and that's it. So I want to find our own Chris Jones. That's what I'm looking for. But I get it. Corner is probably the best position there, so there's nothing wrong with that. Jalen Hyatt, you said it. The thing with Adam Thielen, it's worse than it sounds like. After the season, there was a lot of rumblings coming out of his camp that he felt underappreciated. The guy had like 100 targets. His wife was on Twitter saying how he wants to find a place where he's going to be productive. And he slowed down last year. I don't know if he was 100% healthy last year, but he wasn't the Adam Thielen of old. So we do need to find that number 2 to pair with Justin Jefferson, because there was times where he was pretty much triple teamed. The game against the Packers where we got blown out, there was 3 levels of coverage on him. And he was shut down. So you got to have another option. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson helps. We traded for him. Why we don't have a second-round pick this year. But you got to find another receiver. And KJ Osborne's capable. I still like him as the 3. So Jalen Hyatt, love that pick. An edge rusher, it's a possibility. Personally, I'd rather see an interior linebacker, an inside linebacker. But a guy who can rush the passer, especially you stay with the 3-4 front, you always got to have edge rushers. A center, that's definitely in the cards as well. You mentioned it, Garrett Bradbury was much better this year. Is he going to come back? I don't know. It's a tough one. He still has problems anchoring. He always gets pushed over. He got dominated by Dexter Lawrence in the playoff game. So do we want him back? 60-40, I think. Yeah, we do, which is weird because a year ago we would have said, I didn't know if he was making a team last year. So, and running back, another one here. This is a bigger need than you think on paper. Delvin Cook does not want to take a pay cut. There's rumblings that he may get traded. Miami keeps coming up with the Flores connection, maybe for a defensive back over there. So that's something to watch. Delvin Cook, I think a lot of Vikings fans feel his time with the team has come to an end. So I think running back may even be a higher need. So I'm looking. How big was Chase Brown, did you say?
He's 5'11", 205.
Okay, and I'm looking for more of a power back. You got Ty Chandler, who's speed. Kenny Mwangu is pure speed. So I kind of want more of a bruiser there, but it's fine. I'll take a running back. I think it's actually a realistic pick. Safety, I'm not so sure on, but every time I'm not so sure on them taking a position, they always do. You mentioned the 3 guys, but you got to remember Cam Bynum was another one too, who I was not a fan of last year. I just feel like he's the guy who kind of touches the pile at the end. Didn't make a lot of plays. Didn't get 2 interceptions. Again, it's hard to tell with Ed Donatel's scheme, really, who's a good player or not. It was that bad, but Cam Bynum's there too. So they really got 4. And I think Harrison Smith, that was a guy we thought maybe wouldn't be coming back this next year here, but with Brian Flores in town, he's just a perfect fit for that defense, even at 34 years old. He loves blitzing, and if he's used properly, I think he can get Wilmer Goodyear out of the hitman. So I don't know if they go safety or not. And then the quarterback, I think Kirk Cousins will be the quarterback. After that, I don't know. I think you start trying to find someone in this draft. You took this guy in round 5. I'm thinking round 5 to 7. Find some guy. Maybe you find a Brock Purdy or something. That's what you're hoping for this year. Then maybe you look a little bit higher in the next coming drafts to find your future heir apparent. So you did pretty damn good. You did good.
Okay. For someone who's not a Vikings fan.
You hit a lot of the needs.
I think, there's a lot of good defensive interior linemen. I keep saying this, but in round 3, there's some guys that you could take there instead of Herbig. So maybe you get a defensive lineman there, interior defensive lineman. Or if you go, instead of Joey Porter, you go with the guy from Baylor, right? The really big defensive tackle, or Clancy from, I think, from Notre Dame or Pittsburgh. Maybe it's Pittsburgh, but there's a couple of good defensive linemen. You could go early in the 2nd round and then go cornerback in the 3rd round. There's some guys who'll probably still be around there. So maybe that's what you do a little bit differently. With running backs, a guy you should check out, if you haven't already, is Rashawn Johnson. He's the backup from Bijan in Texas, but he's big, fast, doesn't have a ton of mileage, right? So that's a guy we've looked at too. So if you're looking for a big bruiser but also has speed, that's a guy to look at. All right. Well, there's a couple of comments I want to get at that people, some questions and comments. So Grandizer's a Dolphins fan, by the way. So so when you mentioned Cook's to Miami, real quick, he said Cook is also from Miami, right?
Yep.
But he's got a question for you. Are you Team Cousins, or is it time for a new quarterback?
Yeah, no, we are Team Cousins, both of us. I mean, he's played so damn good, and all he does is get shit on over and over and over again. I don't know. I know he's a dork, and I mean, he's just the typical dad guy. Wears those white shoes with the tight jeans and a flannel tucked in. That's who he is. But he's played very, very well the last couple of years. He's not the reason we lost in the playoffs. It's the defense. Cousins has been amazing. So, but saying that, the time is coming where they need to find an heir apparent. They need to have an exit plan here, because he's what, 35 years old, 34 years old. He's getting up there. They need to find something else. And I don't know if they extend him beyond this year or not. Torn on that, but I love Kirk Cousins. I mean, some of these throws he makes, the hits he takes, this guy is so durable. I don't know if anything can hurt him. I mean, he gets absolutely lit up some games, and he just gets right back up.
Yeah. Makes sense. Granddad is saying, so the purple behind me, right? Yeah, it was just for you. No. So this is actually a blue light. Something about my camera, everything gets a little bit of a red tint, so it looks purple.
It looks great.
Yeah, I'm sure you think it looks great. Yeah. Agent 47 Skull with Enemy. Thanks for dropping in. Right. It's a great segment. Not just because I was on it. It's fun. Getting someone from another team that you're playing on, and you guys have good, fun questions. So, right. So, and then Drew's saying Rashawn Johnson wouldn't be the worst Cook replacement. There you go. Right. Awesome. Jordan P made it. Glad you're here. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Robert has a question. Will you be keeping Delvin Cook, or is it time to move on? And you talked about, in your opinion, how about that?
I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on from Delvin Cook, and he's still got the explosive plays in him. It seems like he just falls so much. Like the gentlest little finger will knock him down, and there's a lot of runs that go nowhere. So as good as he still is, I'm ready to move on. I don't think we need to be putting all that kind of money into a running back. I'm ready. I'm fine with the 3-headed monster. We already got 2 of those heads in place. Madison's going to go somewhere, look for a starting gig. I don't think he's coming back. So, and the Vikings need more draft capital. So I think it's something for Cook. It's not going to get fans excited. It's probably going to be like a 5th and a 6th or some kind of conditional pick like that. But to move him, get some draft capital back, I'm ready for it. I am. And I love Delvin Cook. Don't get me wrong. He's been a great player for us, but I think it's time.
Philosophically, I just don't believe in spending a lot of money on running backs. I think you build that offensive line and you draft guys in rounds 4 and 5, and they can be productive. Offensive line is just much more sustainable. They have longer careers. If if your running back gets injured and you're built around that running back, you're kind of screwed. If one of your offensive linemen gets injured, you can usually deal with that, right? Yep. So I'm with you on that.
Well, awesome. That's their thing. You just said, I mean, our offense used to go through Delvin Cook. When Mike Zimmer was here, it was the run game first, and now it's Justin Jefferson. And Kevin O'Connell loves throwing the ball. Even when the run game's working, he won't sit there and pound it. He will still throw the ball.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. All right, so you're going to show me how it's done now, okay, with your Vikings draft. All right, so here we go. Talk us through what you did here with this draft.
And this isn't even like, I don't know if this is even my ideal one. This is just the one I did. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, if he's there to me, you got to take him. He's a special player. Wide receiver, not our number one need, but we do have to find that complement to Justin Jefferson. Get him open, keep him open. So personally, I'd love to go D-line there. Brian Brisset, the guy from Clemson there, I really like him. I think he can be a disruptor. He's all over the place. Sometimes he goes in top 10. Sometimes he's there in round 2. I have no idea where he's going to come off the board. But he's somebody I always target. A linebacker too, Trenton Simpson. He gets me excited. But I went with Njigba here just because I think he can be a special player. And you pair him with Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's not going to be double covered anymore. So I like that. I had to go there, even though it's probably not my number one position I want to target. But I do like the combination of the two. Caillou Blue Kelly, this guy was awesome at the Senior Bowl. He's got size. He's got swag. He's got speed. He can come up and hit. He kind of reminds me of Andrew Booth Jr., who we drafted a year ago, in terms of their personalities on the field. I think they're both very attacking type of corners. So I do love Caillou Blue Kelly. He gets me very, very excited. Jalen Roy, D-tackle, LSU, he can create interior pressure. He can stuff the run. Our D-line's a major question mark going forward here. I don't know what's going to happen. Delvin Tomlinson, I feel like he's going to be gone. Harrison Phillips, and a couple of unknowns there. So that's scary. I mean, hell, we started Jonathan Bullard last year. That's how bad we were, and we signed him like in June. So that's never a good sign. Tavian Thomas, a big running back. I already think I've seen my last snap with Delvin Cook in purple. So I think running back's definitely a position the Vikings will take. I went with Thomas here just because he's got the size. I think he adds a nice mix with the two backs we already have on the roster. A little more of a workhorse power guy, short yardage, goal line dude. Jake Haener, the MVP of the Senior Bowl, doesn't have great size, but he can move around the pocket. He's pretty accurate, very productive in his Fresno State career. He's got some potential. I do think the Vikings are going to probably look at a quarterback at some point. I think it will be late, like you took in your mock, just to have somebody there they can start to groom for the future, because Kirk Cousins isn't going to play forever. And then Byron Young, the edge rusher here from Tennessee, I was surprised he was still on the board where he was. So I got 2 D linemen, make that front line much better, because pressure up front is going to help your back end, and our back end was horrible last year. So I was pretty happy with this one overall. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I don't have a linebacker here, an inside linebacker, and that's kind of my biggest. You can't solve every need in your mock, and this one didn't have a linebacker, so maybe we get one in free agency, but that's definitely missing from this one.
I think like Jackson Smith and Jigba feels like a really. I mean, I'm not saying exactly what Thielen is, but the type of receiver Thielen is, I feel like he's maybe one of the closer fits. Kind of the big, he's like a power slot, but he's kind of a big receiver. Runs good routes, maybe a little more of a possession than a speed guy. But if you're looking to replace Thielen, that to me at least, that seems like maybe a really good person to replicate, what he does. And as Drew said, JSN and JJ is a cheat code, right? So that'd be a really nice combination. So, and then so that's really interesting. So yeah, I mean, listen, you're the Vikings fan, so better than I do. But looks like a good draft to me. Getting that defensive line like you talked about, getting a running back. So yeah, if it's me, I'm probably trading back out of 23 to get more picks.
And I think that's a huge possibility for the Vikings this year, especially if you're looking at one of those corners. This corner class is super deep. You can move from 23 to 30 and get a very similar type of corner. So that's definitely in the cards this year, no pun intended, but I really think they could do that. Look at Kwesi last year. He moved from 12 to 32, which I was irate. I was in just a drunken stupor after that happened last year. But
so Cardinals fans have had a lot of drunken stupors this year, so we can relate. When you're starting, David Blau as your quarterback, you're kind of excited about what you're seeing.
Former Viking legend. Yeah. So that's a great point you made, though. It's a good year to move down. And you mentioned the guy from Baylor. Is that Siaki? So he would make a lot of sense if we move down too.
Yeah, his comp. People have been comparing a little bit to Vita Vea. I think there's some concerns about his maybe dirt or his stamina. Just playing. Getting winded with a guy his size. But that would be an interesting guy there, right? So.
But Smith and Jigba's the guy I would take. I'm not going to take a trade if he's on the board.
No, that makes sense. I like that as a fit for. Not again, you know better than I do, but I think that makes sense as a fit there. So awesome. All right, well, I'm going to do my Cardinals mock and kind of talk through kind of how I approach this. And I'll tell you, when I do my mocks, because I do them every week on here, I try to change things up.
Yep.
And I usually try to highlight someone or something. So it's not, so there's some things I'd want to do a little differently if I'm actually drafting, but I did this one this way to kind of highlight a few things. So you see Will Anderson as the edge. And I kind of teased this a little bit earlier. Jalen Carter, defensive interior lineman. I'm a big fan, and people who watch the channel know this. I say this all the time. I love building interior pass rush and focus that interior defensive line. And then your edge rushers get freed up a little bit. And I'm just a huge fan of paying those and investing in those kinds of guys. So I've kind of favored Carter in my mock drafts, but I put Will Anderson here instead of Carter because I'm really kind of coming around to this opinion or perspective. And it's not original to me. Someone else talked about this I think it was a PFF podcast actually that talked about this, or it might have been somewhere else. It was somewhere else. But anyway, Will Anderson versus Jalen Carter. two blue chip prospects. It's kind of, Ford or Chevy. Which do you prefer? But Monty Austin Ford has talked about wanting to kind of have this no egos, high character, do your job, Patriots West sort of thing, And Carter is not like, there's not like red flags in terms of off the field or personality, but there's what I saw, maybe yellow flags. There's just like some minor concerns with Jalen Carter, whereas Will Anderson seems to be a much cleaner prospect in terms of the intangibles as well as the play. And I've come around to this opinion that even though I might prefer defensive tackle or defensive interior like Jalen Carter, I think if the Cardinals don't trade back, which I think there's a good chance they do, but if they stay there at 3 and they are for some reason, because quarterbacks go first and second, if Chicago trades out and someone wants a quarterback, trades up there, and then at number 2 they go quarterback, and the Cardinals sitting there with Carter and Anderson, even though I might pick Carter, I think Monty Austin Ford is going Anderson because he's going to see him as a prospect that better fits the culture he wants. So the mock I'm doing this week has Will Anderson at that number 3 pick because I want to highlight that that's something that I'm kind of starting to think and feel that if they stay there, I think that's who they're going with, not Carter from a culture perspective.
Well, I want to ask you about that. So, percentage, what do you think? You actually think you guys are actually going to pick at 3, or do you think you're trading down? Because, it's a good chance you guys can get a really nice offer.
I think we're going to trade back for a couple of reasons. Even though Carter and Anderson are, people have been calling them generational talents, even though those terms are overused. People say you've got to take them. When I look at it, I think, well, okay, Osfort comes from the Patriots, and yeah, he says he's going to put his own spin on some things, but the Patriots have a process of trading. They always trade back and get extra picks. That's the thing they do. They trade back a lot. And I think Austin Fort, as someone who has a history of finding good players later in the draft, is going to value more picks. I think he's going to go that route. And then you add on top of that even if quarterbacks go 1 and 2, and if Levis is the last guy standing, there's still going to be someone who wants to trade up and not, and wants to get that last of the big 3, right? So, when you trade back in a quarterback situation, there's a premium, right? There's a quarterback tax on that trade. So you get better value trading back than you would if someone's trying to trade up to get a tackle or an edge rusher. So I just think the confluence of the fact that as you talked about, there's probably going to be a really good offer, right? That's just hard to refuse. And then Monty Austin Fort coming from a program where they did trade back, and the fact that they need to fix a lot of offensive line and defensive positions, I think they trade back and take advantage of that. I know it's a really long answer, but that's what it is. Drew McWhorter says 10%. We pick at 3. Matthew, Drew, thanks for being here. I'm sorry. Where's John Michael Schmitz? You're right. Shame on me. Right.
None of these mocks had him.
Right. Some of them do later, but you won't be here for but none of these ones do. You're right. Jordan P, he thinks, you need to take him, teams devoid of elite blue chip talent, take Anderson money. I get that argument, but I think there are even like Anderson is probably the safest blue chip kind of defensive player in this draft, but there are blue chip players all through the top 10 to 15. Like they're different positions. There's a couple cornerbacks I really like. There are good players to be had. I understand why people want to get that true cornerstone, but there's some really good players later in the first round, and then getting another pick in the second round or a couple first round picks, depending on who, Detroit has a couple to offer, depending on who the trade is. So, so I think they're trading back though. Drew's saying Trey Lance went for 3 firsts, right? Stroud's on the board, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Brian sees a lot to like here, so I appreciate that, Brian. Brian's a good dude who is part of our Discord and hangs out with us here. Jalen says, I think Bonnie will have a hard time convincing Bidwell that passing on blue chip players is the best way for them to go. I just, maybe. I don't know.
Is Bidwell a meddler?
He's got that reputation.
Okay.
Late in the season or midway through the season, a report came out, and it was discussed and addressed. it was acknowledged that he was having meetings with with Cliff Kingsbury and Vance Joseph every week to kind of just look at the film and talk about what happened. Kind of just trying to assess what happened, and people thought that felt very micromanaging. So Ben saying if Monty does take Anderson, that would say a lot. Yeah. So listen, if they sit there at 3, I think it's Anderson. If Anderson isn't there, I think they definitely trade out. That's just what I think. But I think even if Anderson is going to be there and there's a good offer, they might still trade back. We'll see. But I mean, listen, the home run is if they trade back to a team and still somehow get Carter Anderson, right? If they trade to 4 or 5. So if someone other than the Colts trades up to 1, right? And then the Colts are sitting there at 4 and they're afraid that like Carolina's gonna or someone is gonna come trade with us, and we can convince them to offer something to jump up a spot, and then we still get Anderson. That's chef's kiss.
Yep.
So I took Ika as defensive interior line. We need him. He's more of a run stopper, but he's got a little bit of pass rush potential as a bull rusher and such. So he moves pretty well for a size. So I took him. Matthew Bergeron's a tackle out of Syracuse. We need a right tackle. We have 2 left tackles. We have to sort that out. But I think right. So Bergeron played left tackle, but hopefully maybe he could switch to right. Kobe Turner, who I talked about at the top of the show. So I included him in here. Kendry Miller, running back from TCU. We need a running back, so I went that position there. I went with a different center. Everyone's kind of panning me for not having John Michael Schmidt as well. They should, right? I mean, they really should.
I mean, you have a song.
But I mean, I've got a freaking song, so there needs right. But I did this for a reason because I wanted to highlight what I talked about earlier. That Monty Austinfort has a history of finding good offensive linemen later in the draft and even as undrafted free agents. If you look at the Patriots' offensive lines, they've got guys that were, good players that were taken late. So as much as we love John Michael Schmitz, I would not be shocked if he's taken a guy like a Drake Nugent or someone like that on day 3 at center and turns that guy into a starter. So I kind of took him a center later to highlight that. Then I took receiver Ronnie Bell, guy.
Joe, before I got to ask you one more thing with John Michael Schmidt. Are you horrified he could end up in the division? Would that just kill you guys if he was one of your rivals?
I mean, if I have to see him twice a year and just have that longing feeling, like he could have been ours, there's going to be some sort of sad meme with me looking out a window on a rainy night and just longing
a new song,
for him.
I think.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, he better go as far away from us as possible if we don't take him, right?
Nothing worse than your hated rivals taking a guy you love.
God, he better not go to San Francisco. Oh my God, I'm gonna lose my. What? Okay, so Ronnie Bell receiver. I think we could use a developmental receiver. Then a safety. I take Helms a lot, so I've got a safety. Kind of later to be kind of depth. I think our starting safeties are outstanding, but we could use some depth. So that's my mock draft. Any thoughts that you want to kind of add to that?
I love your first 2 picks. I mean, that's got the makings of a great future at your D-line there. Ronnie Bell's a guy I take a lot in mocks. I do. I always see him down there late, and I grab him as well. And you got me on Kobe Turner now, so now I'm very interested about this Kobe character.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to an hour, so I think we got a question for you. And then we're gonna kind of get you out of here, so you don't have to be here for 2 hours of looking at Cardinals mock drafts. As much as I'm sure you'd love to do that, Nick.
It's been fun, but yeah.
Awesome. Agent 47 has a question for you. How do you feel about Aaron Rodgers possibly gone out of your division?
It's awesome. I love it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, as weird as the dude is, and every time he talks, you just wish he wouldn't. And some of the looks and stuff he does during games, you can't deny his talent. You never feel comfortable until there's 0-0-0 on the clock at the end of the 4th quarter. So it's a great relief. I just hope they didn't stumble onto something else in Jordan Love, because they've had back-to-back great quarterbacks. And if they make it back-to-back, it's going to be another long decade. But yeah, it's nice. It's a relief.
I think for Cardinals fans, it's not completely dissimilar to how we felt about Russell Wilson moving on.
Yeah.
Like he we had a lot of games where he just kind of, really broke our hearts, right?
He did it to us too. We played him like every year for 8 years straight. It's crazy.
Yeah, so you know all about that. Well, there was that one playoff game that was rough too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
you. You're welcome. What was it, the first time I came on your show? You're like, Joe, you're a nice guy, and you come across like this nice guy, and then you just say something that.
Yeah, it was like these subtle jabs.
Yes, indeed. Jordan P. Question to Lupugus. Thoughts on Gannon as a coach since he coached in Minnesota? I know you talked about that earlier.
Yeah, and he interviewed too, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
No, I think he's a hell of a coach. I mean, look what he's done in Philly there. So a guy who's really earned his stripes, and it's his time. So if he doesn't get one this year, he's going to get one soon. So I think, like I said, I love all three of these guys who are interviewing for this Cardinals job. I think you guys are in good hands here, and you can't go wrong. Sure, you're going to have your favorites, but Gannon could turn out to be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Nick, this is your chance. Tell everyone why they should hang out with Onebar and Lupugus. I mean, I know why, because you guys are a lot of fun, but and anything you want to pitch.
No, I mean, it's Joe, we go back and forth. I've given you little hints and stuff, and I take some stuff you do into consideration. Yeah, it was just we have a great time. We have a great community, a lot of fun. We've had we go off on tangents sometimes. Sometimes not always talking about football, but the community's been huge, and I love it. So yes, we're fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Half the time, our viewers just rip on us, and it's fun. We laugh on it. It's just a great time, and we give them shit too. So it's a lot of give and take. And your Minnesota Vikings, we're heartbreak, and it's what we are. And we need each other to rely on. But yeah, definitely check us out. Onebar Lupugus Show at Onebar Lupugus on Twitter, at Lupugus at Onebar. Yeah, it's just a good time.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thank you for being here and hanging out with us. I always have fun when I've been on Schooling with the Enemy. It's a blast. You're a fun dude to hang out with here. Loved having you here. I know that the folks in the chat really enjoyed you with us and appreciated that. So thank you for being here. I do this every off season, so love to have you as a guest next year for Mock Draft Mondays and every year thereafter. And next time we play, if you want me on again for Schooling for the Enemy, so I promise to not take over your show.
That was a weird delay on my end. Like I had to go back and how are you talking ahead? It was just so weird. And I'm like, you did good though. You did a really nice intro.
There you go. It's fun. It was,
the worst part was like it showed me and I was just frozen because I was still watching the intro on my end and like it looked like I was.
It was comedy gold, is what it was unintentionally. Good. So, all right, well, Nick, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Thank you for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. Have a great night, buddy.
Thank you, all your viewers. Appreciate it.
Peace. All right, so we are gonna get that now to your mock drafts, all of you. Okay, so let's get into them. Talk about what y'all did in your mock drafts and rip them apart. No, just kidding. Okay, so first mock draft we have is Chris Young. Chris traded back, got a bunch of picks, and he took Nolan Smith, an edge rusher out of Georgia. An edge rusher who I think is a lot of potential. Isn't someone people have been talking about as much as the other edge rushers, but I think he's a good guy. If you don't take that elite, Will Anderson, edge rusher, and you trade back, I think he's a nice guy to look at there. Obviously anyone from Georgia has some interesting upside. So I like that. And then we've got, of course,
John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
So I know you all were really, I know it was hard for you to get through an hour without the John Michael Schmitz song. So here it was. Obviously, we love JMS in this community, so that's great. Then you have a trade. Let's see, another trade, you traded up. It looks like you traded a couple picks to move up and get him. Which I talked about this before. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up going in the first round. So you might have to do that to get him, right? And then we have Keanu Benton. Defensive interior lineman who I believe had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. But we've talked about him as a player that people like. So like that, getting some interior defensive line help there. Then we've got Deontay Banks, cornerback out of Maryland, part of this really deep cornerback class. So I like getting a cornerback there on day 2. We've got Antonio Maffi, guard of UCLA. I haven't had a chance to look at him much, but getting offensive line help is something we've talked about, so that's good. Then we've got Chase Brown, who I put on Nik's Vikings mock draft that I did for him. So we've talked about this. We need running back help, depth. So I love it. Kadian Thompson, I probably Keaton Thompson. I'm sure I butchered that. Got a receiver out of Virginia. So, I often take receiver, later in the draft, to kind of build that depth. So I like that. We've got Javian Cohen, offensive lineman guard out of Alabama. Then DeMarco Helms, safety Alabama, and then kicker Jake Moody. So, yeah, I think this is a solid draft. You move back some. I think you got some nice players to work with there. Added some depth in defensive line, on offensive line. Yeah, I think this is a solid mock. Lance likes it, right? Robert's son is cheering the John Michael Schmidt song, so that's awesome. Drew says any mock with multiple offensive line is a W, so I like that, right? All right. So interesting. Okay, now interesting. Real quick, so I like that. Good job, Chris. Jordan's got something I'll just throw in here. I know he's been following the coaching search stuff a lot. Latest report on Gannon is the Eagles are currently trying to convince him to stay in Philly as in DC, probably telling him they will pay him a lot more. That's an interesting thought. So we'll see what happens. Okay, well, obviously we're paying attention to all of that and watching the news on that. Okay, Chris, I like this. I think this is a good mock draft. You moved back, picked up some picks, and then traded back up to get John Michael Schmitz. Good stuff. Then we have Drew, who's been hanging out with us. So Drew McWhorter, he sent me 2 mock drafts, and I'm just doing one of them. The first one was a little more of a chaos mock, but we went with something here that wasn't going to get him run out of town. And so he starts by trading back, right? And then it looks like he trades back again. So a couple trade backs, pick up some picks. And then he goes quarterback Christian Gonzalez. Listen, if we trade out of 3 to add picks and take advantage of the fact that, teams are going to want to go after the quarterback, I think for me, the position I like taking there somewhere between, if we end up between picks 7 and 12 or whatever it ends up being, cornerback is usually the position I'm taking there because there's some good players there. So I like that. Then we got at pick 20, Osiris Torrance, so taking arguably the best guard in the class. So, building that interior defensive line. And then, of course,
He's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
So we've got guard and center upgrades there with Torrance and John Michael Schmitz. Then we got Jalen Hyatt, receiver, who I took for the Vikings in that mock draft. So again, a good speed receiver to develop there on the outside. Then we've got Jacqueline, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Roy, defensive interior from LSU. So trying to help that defensive line. Rashawn Johnson, a player we like around these parts. Brandon Joseph, a safety in the 4th round to add some depth there. Developmental edge rusher Ali Gay out of LSU in the 5th round. Tyler Steen, a tackle out of Alabama. And the defensive interior DJ Dale guy I take a lot, good run-stopping defensive lineman late. And then Michael Turk. So I think this punter. I think this is a good draft. You hit on a lot of key positions, some new names that we haven't seen that you've added in here. A few players that maybe we haven't talked about much, but I think you hit on all the key spots. I think you did a good job. So awesome. Give me just a second. There is a cat meowing, if you haven't heard it, who wants me to open the door for him. So I will be right back. But I will, for those of you that are here, let's see how long this takes me. I'm going to give you the intro song so you're not completely without anything to watch while I'm gone. So I'll be right back.
It's got John. Hey, yo, it's Joe. The host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.
All right, I did it. I let the cat out. Do I hear a cat or something? No, that is absolutely a cat. Our cat the cat was stuck in the room here. He wanted out, right? For a minute, I thought it was, yeah. Nope, that was absolutely a cat. So there we go. All right, so Yes. So Drew says, thank you all. Try to get some fan favorite names and a few I hadn't seen. Nice. Like it. Robert Moore approves of this, right? Lance likes it, right? Jordan P likes Gonzalez. Top 3 picks are great, and it's just sucking pass on Will or Jalen, but he likes Gonzalez. Let's see. And yeah, overall, our offensive line problem is solved with this mock, right? Brian's hanging out here. Thanks for hanging out with us. He's gonna appreciate you for submitting one. Thank you for everything you do to help be part of the community. So okay, Drew, I think you're getting rave reviews on this mock. I think you did a good job there. Nice. Next up, we have Lance, who's hanging out with us. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, Lance, this first pick is going to be a little spicy for some people. Staying at 3, Tyree Wilson. Lance, and you can tell me. I'd love to know, when you took him, were Anderson and Carter still on the board? I'm just curious because a lot of people. I mean, Wilson is a guy that is getting talked about as a top 10 pick. People like his length in particular. They like his raw tools. Some people have compared him like an Alvin Smith, and a guy who has some potential, but maybe needs to develop some. So he's an interesting prospect. But I'm curious if you chose to take him over the other two just for a reason, or if they were gone from the board. If Anderson and Carter were gone, and then you took Wilson as next best. So I'm just curious. But good. I mean, I know Red Sea, a guy who's in our Discord. Corey is not a fan of Tyree Wilson. I like Wilson more than Corey does. I think he's got some interesting traits. He just needs to build on them. And they're okay. And Drew saying, Tyree definitely has the best bull rush in the draft. First step needs work, right? There's Red Sea. Red Sea doesn't anything with Wilson. He is right. So last saying probably Anderson. I think he comps as Commander's DN. What's his name? Just bigger and larger, unlike Anderson. Okay. So you like the size there. Okay. So I think that's a pick that's probably controversial for some fans going Wilson. Now for me, and here's what I would say. If I'm the Cardinals and I like Wilson, I'm going to trade back and try to get him, because you can probably trade back, take advantage of someone who wants to move up, add extra picks, and still get Wilson. So for me, if Wilson is the guy I want to come out of here with, then I'm going to trade back and still try to get him. So that's just the thing I would say. Jordan P saying Wilson is so raw, that's his issue, right? But the tools are there, right? He's got some things that you can't coach in terms of his size and everything. So, all right, then we have Osiris Torrance, arguably the best guard in draft. Getting him at pick 34 is really nice. If he falls that far, I think the Cardinals really should probably grab him. I mean, that's a great pick right there. He's a guy who you usually think is going to go in the first round. So love getting him there. Keanu Benton's another guy we've talked about a lot here. We really like him. So, I think that's a good pick in the interior defensive lineman. Luke Whippler, one of the better centers in the draft. We all have talked about that. So that's great. A.T. Perry, wide receiver out of Wake Forest. I know a lot of people like him. I need to look at him a little bit more, but getting a receiver on day 3, I like it. Ivan Pace Jr., and Nik, when he was there, you may remember he talked about he loves Pace as a linebacker. So I talked about this a little bit. Getting a guy to rotate in there is nice. So I like taking a linebacker on day 3. To kind of be part of that rotation. And if they move to a 4-3, then we're going to need a third linebacker. So I like that. We love Kenny Pace. Kenny McIntosh around here. So we've talked about him a lot. Great pick. And, getting a quarterback in round 6, Max Duggan out of TCU had a great season. I don't hate that. For me, and I know I've talked about this before, I think the Kyler Murray injury makes drafting a quarterback kind of weird and tricky because, all right, if, you figure you're going to start the season with 2 veterans, whether it be Colt McCoy and let's say, someone like Jacoby Brissett or someone else, or maybe McCoy retires or moves on and you bring in 2 veterans. And then if you're drafting a third guy, when Kyler is healthy, you have 4 quarterbacks, unless one of them gets injured and goes on the IR, which is possible. And you have to figure out, okay, which of these guys are we cutting? Are you cutting one of those veterans you just signed? If you drafted a guy and then you cut him and try to get him on the practice squad, he might not make it through waivers. So for me, this is just me. For this year, I'm going with veterans for quarterbacks for now. But in 2024, when Kyler's healthy and hopefully and everything's on kind of on pace and we're kind of in with our new coach. In 2024, I'd be all for drafting a quarterback on day 3 as a kind of a long-term backup. So that's just my preference, right? So again, that's just I don't hate the pick. It's just for me, that's why I'm not taking quarterbacks on day 3 this year, but I would totally do it next year. But again, that's just personal preference, right? Jordan P saying Ivan Pace showed ridiculous pass rush moves at the Senior Bowl. People were comparing his pass rush moves to Micah Parsons. That's something right there. Wow. So that would be an interesting, certainly thing to add, right? So yeah. So overall, though, I think this is, I know some people hate Wilson. For me, again, like I said, I don't hate Wilson as a pick. If I'm taking him, I'm trading back, taking him in at somewhere between picks 5 and 7, and then adding draft picks. But that in overall, I love the Torrance pick. Benton's a good pick. Whippler. Overall, I think you did a good job addressing the needs and everything. So good draft with overall with some of these players. Nice. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Red Sea. So Red Sea has a trade back scenario to pick 8. And then he takes Miles Murphy, an edge rusher, right? So if you trade back, right, and you're not getting Will Anderson, then Miles Murphy is one of those next tiers of edge rushers. So he trade back up Miles Murphy. Then he got Healy Ringo in the 2nd round. And then, of course,
it's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
We've got JMS, love that, right? Then we've got Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. Again, we talked about needing a running back. I'm going running backs later, so this is a little early for me, but it's a good player. Don't hate the pick. Then we've got he traded Hopkins, and that was one of the picks that he used for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's trading Hopkins to the Chiefs there, right? Then we got Keanu Benton that we talked about before. Andrew Voorhees, a guard. We talked about him. Got Brandon Joseph, a safety, adding some depth there. Trey Palmer, receiver in Nebraska. So we like getting a receiver in there. Some depth at tight end. Cade Silver out of Ohio State. And I don't hate the idea of taking a tight end on day 3. I know we have Zach Ertz. Max Williams we like around these parts, but he's still, we're not sure if he's, how healthy he is. Obviously, we drafted Trey McBride, but I don't mind getting a tight end on day 3 for some depth because, maybe they don't bring back Max Williams, or maybe they do, but they need to draft and develop someone to be part of that group when Ertz retires. So getting a day 3 tight end, I kind of like that. We've got Ekiyor Jr., the guard, I'm sure I butchered that, out of Alabama. Some more depth at guard. We've got Mahmoud Diabate. I want to say diabetes, but that wouldn't be nice. Diabate, linebacker out of Utah, and then kicker Jake Moody. So, yeah, right. Some good players right here, right? I think you did, hit on all the spots. There's some interesting names that we hadn't seen before. I like it. We've got MKT Bongo just jumped in. Thanks for being here, hanging out with us. Appreciate that. Let's see. Salty Scammer saying it. I remember this too because I was, I've been a fan for a long time. I remember trading that pick that could have been drafted in Suggs and getting 2 average players. Never again. I think calling him average might even Calvin Pace and the receiver out of Penn State. I forget his name, and they weren't great. And I totally get that. I'm also, though, I think it's dangerous to be kind of a prisoner of those past traumatic situations. Just because something didn't work in the past doesn't mean it can't work now. So I don't let that stuff kind of I don't let that stuff kind of influence how I'm thinking about now. But I am Brian Johnson. Yeah, I totally understand though that sentiment because I remember that, right? I mean, I remember that vividly. So I get that. Soul Pancakes, we got Marcus Zabarra. Thanks for hanging out with us. The goal next year is to get to the Senior Bowl. Nice. Yeah. That would be fun to get to if you're able to get there. Classy Nasty, thanks for being a draft a kicker, right? So we're seeing more and more kickers on these mock drafts, right? So yeah, Robert Moore approves. He thinks it's a balanced draft, so he likes that. So okay. Yeah, and at least Pace was a starter in Super Bowl roster, not a great one. Not Suggs, yeah, for sure, right? All right, so good draft. Let's go on to the next one. We have Breadstick Daddy, who I think was in here earlier. Say hey if you're still here hanging out with us, Austin. So he traded back, and see, okay, this is already a win, right? He's traded back to 5, and he still gets Will Anderson. That is. And we talked about that earlier. If you can trade back and get him, boy, that's now. I don't know. The quarterbacks have to go 1, 2, and 3 for that to work out, right? But if you can pull that off, that is a coup. So I like that. Obviously, that's right there. That's an A+ move. Then we got a quarterback at 34, Eli Ricks out of Alabama. A good cornerback we haven't talked about much, but he's definitely got. Played well. He's a guy that I would definitely be excited to get somewhere, on day 2. So I love that pick for sure. And
it's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
So obviously JMS, that I don't care what PFF says, it's not a D+ pick. That is an A++++ pick. So love that. Then we've got Moro Jomo, defensive interior out of Texas. I like him. He's, again, I keep saying this, but there's a lot of good defensive interior linemen going in rounds, 2 through 4, and that is one of them. So I love that. Got a receiver, Andre Iosivas. I'm probably butchering that, out of Princeton. I don't know a lot about him. I need to look at him a little bit more, but I like taking those guys on day 2 and 3 that are kind of developmental, especially if they've got the tools there. So that's an interesting guy to look at. Then we've got double dipped on the interior defensive line, Byron Young out of Alabama, like that. We've got Ekiyor, the guard out of Alabama, so helping again with the trenches. Kenny McIntosh, we always love seeing him on drafts. And then the fullback, Hunter Lipke. So, it'll be interesting to see if, who we bring in and what kind of offense they run. But if it's more of a conventional offense, we might be looking at add a fullback. And so I could absolutely see that happen depending on who we bring in as coach and what kind of offense they run, right? Drew saying, Eli Ricks, I like, way under the radar for some people. Yep, I agree. So, yeah, I like this mock a lot. I mean, right at the top, those first 4 picks in particular are just really big wins for me. And the way you got Anderson traded back, good draft all around. I like it a lot. So next we have Robert Moore, who's been hanging out with us and with his son. So, I'll tell you what, just for your son, Robert, we're going to do the whole John Michael Schmidt song, even though you didn't. Okay. Your son is going to look at you with a very disappointing look right now because you did not draft John Michael Schmidt, but fear not. Joe is here, and he is going to make up for the failing of your father in not drafting John Michael Schmidt. And I am going to play for you the entire John Michael Schmidt song. Are you ready? Are you listening? Here it comes.
John Michael, he's our center Schmitz. His name's on my draft too. No matter what they say, this mock is A-okay. It's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
All right. So there you go, Robert. Don't say I've never done anything for you. And I hope your son enjoyed the full John Michael Schmidt song, even though you did not take John Michael Schmidt. All right. So Jalen Carter, number 3. Obviously, one of the 2 players that I think are worth taking there, so I like that. Then you get an edge rusher. So there's a trade here, right? You've done a trade. Let's see. You traded you traded back out of your second round pick and got some extra picks, right? A couple third round picks and a fourth. Okay. So you went for some volume of picks there. So you traded back, and that's why you didn't get John Michael Schmitz. Okay. And then you got a edge rusher out of USC, Tui Peludo. I probably butchered that, but got an edge rusher round 3. Then you've got a quarterback, Trevius Hodges Tomlinson out of TCU. I think he's a little bit of a smaller quarterback with really good skills, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so he might be more of a slot. Then you've got DeJuan Jones, tackle out of Ohio State. I think that's good value there, even though PFF doesn't agree, right? You got Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU, a couple TCU players. You got 3 TCU players, but I like that. Joe Tippmann, a center. And I'll tell you, like, as much as you joke about that, Tippmann's a guy I kind of have been taking on mock drafts as well in general, because I'm starting to look to take center on day 3, because I think that's might be more where Monty Austinfort goes. We'll see. So getting us center there. Then halfback Kendry Miller and McIntosh. You double dip the running backs. Like both those running backs, 2 of my favorite to take. So I like that a lot. Miller's really productive. McIntosh, love his receiving, and he's got some running ability as well. Ronnie Bell, we talked about, like him. And DeMarco Hallum's a guy I often take there in round 6 to get some safety depth out of Alabama. I like this mock a lot. I really do, quite a bit. Jordan's saying, I like Tua Peludo. He's such an interesting prospect. They have him listed as edge, but he's 290. He's really an interior player who can also play edge. He's extremely versatile. That's interesting. And, depending who they get as a coach, that kind of versatility might be really useful. So I like that. And, he had 13.5 sacks this year, fire. So thanks for the insight there, Jordan. So, yeah, I think this is a really good mock. One of these mock draft Mondays, I will draft John Michael Schmitz, right? But yeah, I think this is a win. I think, listen, PFF says this is a B+ draft, but I think this is at least an A- draft, if not better. So good job. I like it, Robert. Now we have Mr. Money Minetti. I don't know if you're here hanging out with us in the draft, but if you are, say hey. And he's got started with a trade back. Quite a big trade back. This is like the Ricky Williams treatment almost, like just tons of picks. So you really got quite a bit, right? So traded back quite a bit, and then you went with Bijan Robinson, halfback, right? The guy, a lot of people say is the best running back to come out since Saquon Barkley. I've talked about before. For me, I don't like taking running backs in first round, and I'm a little iffy on round 2. But listen, if you're going to take one, he's the one to take. And, that's probably around where he's probably going to go somewhere in that range. So, for me, for my roster building philosophy, I'm not doing it, but I'm not going to say it's a bad pick because the guy is a great talent, right? Robert Moore says, ooh, spicy, right? But not my philosophy, but, great player. No, not questioning the talent, that's for sure. Cam Smith, cornerback. That's great value right there, right? Is that you? MKT Bongo, Mr. Minute, is that you? Okay, because sometimes it's funny. Like, I know people like as one name in Discord and another name in Twitter and then another name in here, and sometimes I just like Drew McWhorter. Like, I just realized that like I have all these conversations with him on Twitter under a different name, and I'm like, oh, what's your name in the chat? He's like, Drew McWhorter. I'm like, oh my God. Like, up until this point, I knew you as 2 different people. So it's kind of weird for me. Anyway, so yeah, okay. So Cam Smith, though, that's a guy who's often going in the first round, for like middle of the first round. So they graded that as an A+, and I love that pick. If you get him there at 34, I think that's the really, really good pick. So that's a really good run right there. And then obviously
It's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
All right, so we got JMS, so love that. Keanu Benton, we talked about that. Really good pick there. Andrew Voorhees getting that guard, love that. Jalen Jones double dipped on cornerbacks and got another cornerback at good value there, right, in the 3rd round. A guy that earlier in the draft process we thought might have been a first-round pick. Seems like he's maybe a little bit later, but still seems like a good prospect. a safety, Christopher Smith out of Georgia. So got another safety, just a different one, but getting some safety depth. We've got the receiver out of Princeton, Iosivas, showing up again. So I think Ivan Pace, we've talked about him. So we love that. That is that pick, like what the potential he has, right? And then we got Luke Haggard, tackle out of Indiana. So, getting a tackle to develop a little bit later, like that. And all right, so double kicker. What's up with that? I actually know what's up with that. Further explanation. So he thought he was drafting a punter with one of those. So that's the answer. He messaged me. So he was like, he thought the second one was a punter. So for whatever reason, right? So double kicker, right? So one of those should be a punter, but all right. I mean, I love the Cam Smith pick. The value is so good there. Obviously John Michael Schmitz. There's some players I really like through here. Again, running back first round's not my thing, but great player. I'm not going to question that. So overall, I mean, I think this is a solid draft. I do things a little bit differently based on my philosophy, but I think you pick some really good players, some really good values, right? And the thought process, according to Jordan P., is once one kicker misses, put the other in kicker rotation all times, right? Yeah, right. So there you go, right? Man, it was a late night. I thought it was Turk, I swear. Right? Drew saying, after the kicker nightmares last year, I'll allow it, right? Right. So, yeah. Okay. So, listen, it made it interesting. So, okay. No, some double kickers aside, there's some really nice picks here. So, okay. We have Avery 1X. I don't know if you're in here, Avery. If you are, let us know. But someone who's very active in Discord. So, he went Will Anderson, number 3 overall. Mazzy Smith, defensive interior lineman with some really great tools to work with. Really interesting player that I like. Going at number 34. Jahmyr Gibbs makes another appearance. He was on Red Seas mock, running back in. Traded. There's a Hopkins trade, and much like the same as Corey's draft, one of the picks that you traded Hopkins for was used to take Jahmyr Gibbs. So so getting a running back there late in the second round. Keanu Benton showed up a lot tonight. We like him. Luke Whippler, really good center. Andrew Voorhees. Akio Blue Kelly, that's a player that Nick took in his mock draft. So, another one of those cornerbacks on this really deep cornerback class. So I like that. Jake Bobo, wide receiver out of UCLA, so getting developmental receiver. And then Jaron Hall, quarterback out of BYU. Again, like we talked about with Lance's, I don't hate taking quarterback later in general. For me, it's just this is a weird year to do that. I already talked about why, but I don't hate it. I think this is a really good mock draft. Will Anderson, obviously, we know he's a stud. I like Mazzy Smith. He had like a minor. I know people talk about this. He had like a misdemeanor gun possession charge off the field, but I don't think that's going to really impact his draft stock. I mean, I don't want to get into that too much, but like that's not the same kind of off the field stuff. That's not the type of off the field stuff that I think is really going to hurt him. I think it's people are going to, it's going to come up as a mistake, whatever. But I think I don't think that'll hurt his draft stock. But I really like him as a player, as a prospect. Getting running back, getting some offensive line help, getting some depth at cornerback. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this, right? Drew McWhorter saying Jahmyr Gibbs, young Alvin Kamara, love it. Okay, nice. So likes that. Okay. Gary saying since D'Amico Ryans is now head coach of the Texans, he may take a defensive player instead of quarterback with that second pick. That's possible. That's absolutely possible. But even though he is Saleh took a quarterback. Now I know that didn't work out, right? Because Wilson has looked like a really big bust. But a first-time head coach picking early usually likes to pick a quarterback, even a defensive coach. They like to get their quarterback in place and draft so that they can start the clock on developing them and building them around them. And also, if you're a coach, having that rookie quarterback in some ways helps give you a little bit of job security, at least for the first 2 or 3 years. And I know it doesn't always happen. It certainly didn't happen with Wilkes here, but I don't know. Even though he's a defensive coach, I really think he's probably still going to go quarterback. Listen, if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But just those, if you're a first-time coach with a team that needs a starting quarterback and you have that premium pick and there's a quarterback on the board, even if you're a defensive coach, you generally take that guy. So I still think they will, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, right? Austin's saying about Gibbs, he's number one on Feldman's freaks list in terms of freaky athletics. Okay. Jordan also thinks he's Kamara with in speed and burst. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, and Jordan saying he was a defensive guy. You need a quarterback. Let the first 3 picks get traded for quarterbacks, and the board goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Yeah. All right, but no, listen, this is a good mock. I like it. I like just about everything you've done on here, for the most part. Maybe a few things I do a little bit different, right? But yeah, I like it. Next we have Erva, who's I think in here as what was the name you were under here? You were in here earlier, I think, though. Moore's Legacy, I believe. You've got a different name on Twitter now that I think is a Buddha Baker inspired name. All right, so we've got to trade for Hopkins. Oh, now this is spicy, right? You traded Kyler Murray. Whoo! All right. I mean, there you are. Hola. Jordan P. Whoa, that's not okay. Hey, man, it's your mock draft, right? So, I don't know what your plan is to deal with the $50 million or so in dead cap money and the $40 million negative cap negative cap savings. But we'll entertain it anyway, right? All right, so we've got that trade, right? Couple trades. Will Anderson, right? Drafted him. We love him, right? Quentin Johnson, really interesting receiver. I think he's a man. If there's a receiver in this class who's going to be an absolute superstar based on the physical tools, to me, it's Quentin Johnson is going to be that guy. I'm not saying he will be that, but he's that guy who's just that real, big, fast, strong. I like him as a prospect. If you're looking for a star receiver, a true elite potential receiver, I think he's the one who has that potential, the upside, the ceiling. Then we went Bijan Robinson, so you're getting some playmakers. It's just we don't have a quarterback to throw to them, but hey, we got playmakers. And then Kalijah Cansey, we love him, defensive interior out of Pittsburgh. Then we've got Garrett Williams, another part of this deep cornerback class. We've got Deonte Banks, another cornerback. So you doubled up on the cornerbacks. You've got another trade there, getting some extra picks. We've got Hendon Hooker, so we've got a rookie quarterback out of Tennessee. So that's who's throwing the ball to him. So he's an interesting prospect, those quarterbacks. But we've got Andrew Voorhees. We like him as guard linebacker. Jordan Williams out of Tulane. Rashawn Johnson, we like him. So you reunited Robinson and Johnson in the NFL. I see what you did. They're nice. Okay. Gervarius Owens, safety out of Houston. Kenny McIntosh, we've got a whole new backfield, right? Oh, and you traded, let's see, James, is that James Conner? Okay, for something Huntley. Okay, so you've done a trade. Okay. Then you've got Edge Brenton Cox Jr., receiver, Jadakius Bonds, kicker. You got a kicker on the Jake Booty. Whoo! Okay. So Jordan P says, whoa. H47 says, too spicy. Moore's is saying, suck for a year. That's how we're going to deal with it. Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not even joking. From a salary cap perspective, that hit for Kyler is so bad. If we were to trade him, right, there's a short window. They have something that they have to exercise, an option that if they don't, they could cut him or whatever with it not being as bad. Someone tweeted about this and wrote about this. But if they do exercise that option, and I do think they're going to, I just don't think it's going to happen. But if with the cap hit, it would be, especially if they were to exercise that option, you literally couldn't re-sign any of our free agents. These guys would all be starting. So, all right. So we've got, too spicy. Yeah, Drew's fake mock that he sent was trading K1, right? His spicy one. Head and Hooker for MVP, right? Yeah, if we trade K1, at least give me CJ Stroud, right? Drew saying Quentin Johnson scares the hell out of me. He's 6'4", 33% contested catch rate. He's not the jump ball guy, but his speed and size is stupid. Biggest boom wide receiver first rounds. Yeah, I agree. Boomer bust is a good way to describe him, right? But he's got those tools that if he booms, boy, is he going to boom. Robert Moore, no center fail, right? You had all those picks, and you couldn't get us a center. What's up with that, man? All right, okay. We'll get him next year. That's the answer, right? Caleb Huntley is a running back. Okay, the Falcons showed a lot of promise. Okay. So you draft 3 running backs and trade for another. Okay, interesting. Okay. Next level spicy. That's for sure. This was spicy. This was fun. Not doing it, but it was fun. Okay. Thank you for that one. Gazornik. And I know Brian said he had to get out of here, so he'll be watching this later, right? Austin saying winner the most likely unlikely mock goes to, right? That last one, right? All right. So Brian Gazornik, he's got Jalen Carter, number 3. We like Carter a lot. Jordan Addison makes it. I love that. If Jordan Addison makes it to 34, that's a huge one. He's like, as much as it's talked about how Quentin Johnson is like the biggest kind of upside receiver, to me, Jordan Addison of these early receivers is, I think, the safest. We've talked about him before. I know Jordan P loves him, right? You know, he's that receiver that's that good route runner. He's not the hugest guy. He's not the fastest, but he's got adequate speed. But he's the guy who's the safe pick who comes in and is a starter and productive right away. So I love that. So to me, to get him at 34 is a huge, huge, huge win. And then John Michael Schmitz in the 3rd round. What? He's not making the 3rd round, but if that happened, I don't think. If that happened, oh my goodness. So
it's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
Okay, so like those first 3 picks are awesome. Like if it somehow worked out, then you've got Devon Achane, like fat, speedy running back. If we somehow got those first 3 picks where we got them, and that 4th pick, to me, that's a huge one. Jalen Carter, we talked about him a lot, but Addison at 34 and Schmitz in the 3rd round. If that happened, I'd have to know who sold their soul to the devil, or who has dirt on who, or maybe if that draft happened, maybe it's because the NFL script writers felt like they shit on us enough this last year because this is a rough year, right? So maybe that's why we had such a bad year, but they feel sorry for us and they give us that amazing first 3 picks, right? So love those 3 players, right? Shane is a speedy running back, so we talked about him, like him. Joshua Gray getting a tackle at Oregon State. We like getting a tackle there to develop. Not sure if he's a right tackle or left, but like that. Drew likes Mekhi Gardner, that cornerback in the 5th round. Listen, LSU, right? It's DBU, right? Defensive back U. They produce good cornerbacks, so if you get a guy out of there, that's a good one, right? We've got Trey Dean III, safety out of Florida. Like getting some drafted safety. We talked about that. Then getting another cornerback, Darrell Luter Jr. out of South Alabama. So, listen, we drafted Christian Matthew out of Valdosta State, small college, getting another smaller school kind of cornerback late to develop, right? So, yeah, I like this a lot. Drew McWhorter saying Matt Ishbia wrote that script, right? Yeah, he's the toast of the town with getting Kevin Durant to the Suns, right? So, yeah. But yeah, no, listen, this is a really good draft. Yeah, no guard, so yeah, maybe if it's me instead of 2 cornerbacks, I'm taking a guard if we're nitpicking, but still, yeah, like Robert said, man, if this is how the Cardinals draft worked out, I'd be impressed on a whole new level, right? So, yeah, love it. Maybe don't think it's super realistic that it falls that way for us, but if it did, that would be exciting. We have Canucks 3322, another one of our friends from the great land up north in Canada. So thank you for submitting this. I don't know if you're hanging out with us tonight, but hopefully you get a chance to watch it if you aren't. Traded back to 6 and still got Will Anderson. We've talked about that before. If you pull that off, that is great. And then get Devon Witherspoon, who's, to me, maybe my favorite cornerback in this class. I mean, there's it's a deep class. There's good cornerbacks, right, all through the draft. But this is the guy. If I'm taking a cornerback early, this is my pick. He was so good this year, and so I love that, getting both of those guys. Whoo, that is a very nice. Obviously, you traded back with Detroit, who had 2 first-round picks to pull that off. I think that is a really, really big win if you get those 2 guys. To me, the best edge rusher and the best cornerback. Man, love it. And then you follow up with Kalijah Kancey in the second round, getting a nice disruptive interior defensive lineman. Love that. And, of course,
It's got John Michael, he's our center Schmitz.
getting JMS just adds to this, right? So that's great pick. Then you've traded Hopkins, and that's the pick that we got John Michael Schmitz with, okay? And then we've got Matthew Bergeron, a tackle that I took in my draft, I believe. So get another tackle who maybe is a swing tackle, maybe becomes a right tackle. We'll see. So I like that. Andrew Voorhees, we got a guard there. We've got the dynamic duo of Kendra Miller and Kenny McIntosh. Love that. Warren McClendon, right tackle out of Georgia. I talked about him before. We need a right tackle of the future, if not this year. I love getting McClendon on day 3. He was a starter in Georgia at the SEC. I think he goes later because he doesn't play left tackle. But if you need a right tackle, I think this is really good. Love DJ Dale. I take him a lot of my drafts. If you're getting a solid run-stopping defensive lineman out of Alabama in 6th round, I love it. Right? So, listen, you're getting some rave reviews. Like, Jordan, holy cow, Canucks draft is the best I've seen. Right? Listen, Jordan follows the draft, and he's not, he pays attention. So I think if you get a Jordan P endorsement, that's pretty good, right? He loves this draft, right? Well, Devon, Kancey and Schmitz are all first-round level players, and we got all 4 of them, like the 2 running backs and Voorhees. So listen, good job, Canucks. I think this is one of the better drafts I've seen. Like, not even just making that up. I think this is really, really good. Robert says this draft is good value picks, right? Yeah, for sure, right? Matthew finally got one to work out well for me. Is this you, Matthew? Is this you? Let us know if that's you. But yeah, right. Wow, Anderson is 6, right? Drew loves this trade back partner with Detroit. I do too, right? To get in 2 first-round picks. So I think that's a great trade back partner, right? So like Drew saying the only player I could possibly add to make this my all-time favorite mock draft would be Foskey, but I wouldn't replace anyone other than Miller, right? Okay. So yeah. So Canucks, I think you have everyone everyone, that's our last draft. Everyone in the chat, I want you to tell me, is this the best mock of the night? Give me a yes or no. Okay. And no doesn't mean it's a bad one. It's not the best, but give me a yes. Was this the best mock of the night? Tell me. Matthew saying, yeah, okay, so this is you. Okay. Wish it was more realistic though. Yeah, I hear you, right? So I want to see in the chats, was this the best mock of the draft? Tell me yes if it was. I just want to hear. So I'll wait for those comments to come in. We got a yes. We got a maybe. Okay. We got a yeah. This clears mine, yes. Yeah, but unrealistic. Okay. I mean, probably that Witherspoon seems, but still great, We take the picks, right? The last 2 are close, right? Okay. All right. Can't wait to get our new coach out with you there. Yeah, but doubt Anderson falls that far. Probably, yeah. I think you're probably right. Okay. All right. So it's close enough that if isn't the best, people think it's wrong. Okay. So here's why I'm asking. Canucks, or as you're in here, Matthew. All right, Matthew. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to message me either in Discord or in Twitter. If I'm not following you on Twitter, you won't be able to DM me, so you might have to on Discord. But message me, send me a direct message on Twitter. I'm sorry, in Discord, with your mailing address and your T-shirt size, and I am going to send you a TCR T-shirt for this, just because you had a really great mock draft. So please message me your mailing address and your T-shirt size. And I will send you a T-shirt because you had a heck of a mock. And yeah. So please do that when you get a chance. Great job. All right. Jordan P., not sure if you talked about this show, but thoughts on all this ridiculous talk that Gannon is a horrible hire now because of Super Bowl. Okay. We did not talk about that. I know you were discussing that on Twitter, right? So I think why don't we talk about this a little bit and then we'll get out of here because we are done with the mock drafts. All right. So there's this conversation, right? So, Gannon is considered one of the better, he's considered one of the better coaching prospects. And then, with the way that the game ended and, and everything, some people are like, oh, forget that. Right. And I agree with you, Jordan, that I think that is not, I don't buy into that. Like, you don't hire him because of that. Right. For me, I said this on Twitter, I still have Kafka and Lou ahead of him for me, but it's not about the Super Bowl. And it's one game against probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now, who's going to go down as an all-time great, who's already got got a Hall of Fame career in 5 years, and is probably going to win a couple more Super Bowls. And Andy Reid. So like the fact that in the biggest game against one of the best coaches in the NFL and the best quarterback on a field that was kind of whatever, was kind of tough, that you got, the points be scored on you in one game, you don't wipe away everything a coach has done for that reason alone. So I agree that you don't take him out of consideration because of the Super Bowl. My reasons for preferring Lou and Kafka are not because of the Super Bowl. I tweeted this out. For me, Lou, I think Gannon has the potential to be a great coach. For me, Kafka, what he did going to the Giants and working with Daniel Jones and no receivers of note and making an efficient offense after having worked with Mahomes, I've seen him. He's did a lot with not much, right? And with Anarumo, like the Bengals don't have a great defensive roster. They're okay, but they're not elite defensive personnel, and he's done well. So for me, Gannon has a loaded roster, and I'm not saying he isn't a good coach, but I'm just saying the other two candidates have an edge for me because I've seen them in situations where they had really good outcomes with limited personnel. So if you're having to split hairs between the three candidates, you got to find something that makes you prefer them. So for me, that's one of those things. But I still think Gannon's a great coaching candidate. If they end up with him, I will be happy and be optimistic. But yeah, I agree. You don't take one game and throw it out, right, because of that. So I agree with that, right? So okay. Jordan saying, D'Amico Ryans gave a 42 to Mahomes, right? So that happens, right? So yeah, I agree with that, right? Now we're saying, this is interesting. Jordan P mentioned this earlier. The Eagles are trying to convince Gannon to stay. He's saying, which means the Cardinals probably offered him the job. That's an interesting thought. That speculation could be that. It's plausible. It makes sense, right? So yeah, could be, right? It's interesting. Okay. And Robert Moore saying, I'm not for Gannon. I'm hearing Eagles fans don't like him. That's pretty SB. But as for his Super Bowl performance, he failed to just the second half. That tells me lack of experience. Maybe, yeah. Again, I'm not gonna take one game for me, but yeah, Eagles fans hate everyone, right? So yeah, that's fair, right? So yeah, so for me, yeah. Granddad is saying, Joseph, it's not just one game, though. Look at the talent the Eagles defense had, and it was their weakest link. So listen, to me, I'm still looking at it as one game because a game against the best quarterback in the NFL. So it's not about that game. But for me, the personnel, like I said earlier, is why I think, I would want to see more from Gannon. If Gannon had been a defensive coordinator and was successful on another team that didn't have the same personnel, then I'd be sold on him. So that's me, right? But again, I still think he's a good candidate, but yeah. All right. So a lot of things we've talked about. We went through our mock drafts, right? We've talked about the coaching thing a little bit, right? So this has been a fun night. I hope you all enjoyed having, Nik Edlund from the Onebar and Lupugus Show. He's a good dude, a lot of fun. I enjoy hanging out with them. Hope you all enjoyed the mock drafts. I thought there were some really good ones, some fun ones, and some that were a little crazy, but fun because they were crazy. So appreciate everyone who's here. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We're going to keep doing Mock Draft Monday every Monday, so make sure you get your mock drafts in. Appreciate all the people who support the channel and everything. And we're going to get ourselves out of here. I am going to throw up the shout outs to the channel members and give you all the full song, the intro, outro song on our way out. So thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. Have a great night. And, at whatever point the Cardinals hire a coach, which maybe it's tomorrow, look for an emergency live stream. We'll probably jump on if, the night it happens, which sounds like tomorrow. We'll see. So anyway, watch for that. Thank you all for being here. Hang out with you. Appreciate you hanging out with us. And we will see you all later. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's Joe Mo. He's the host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.